والله يدعو إلى دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to Mercy to Mankind. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Last time we met, we discussed how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent to the countryside for breastfeeding, and we talked about the blessings that the family that took the Prophet ﷺ for breastfeeding found through him, ﷺ, such as the prosperity, the things that they've seen, though they were in drought and almost famine, but they had all these blessings through the Prophet ﷺ. The mother being able to breastfeed, though she was hungry and was not able to do so before taking the Prophet ﷺ, the camel became healthy, the sheep became fat, and the area itself became green. All of this through the blessing of the Prophet ﷺ. After 2 years concluded, the woman who was breastfeeding the Prophet ﷺ, Halima, took him back to his maternal mother and to Amina, and she wanted to keep him more because she was emotionally attached to this child who was not like any other.
She saw the blessings that Allah bestowed upon her and her husband and his family.
Of course, this was not the only reason, because you cannot help but to love this child. It is nothing that you can do about it. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was the mercy to all mankind, and he was himself a blessing. So though they realized the blessings that they have been touching with their own hands through the Prophet ﷺ, yet they still loved him as a child who was like no other. So she tried to convince his mother, and the mother conceded and accepted that he stays with her for a few more years, so that in order for him to become stronger, fitter, and more more fluent in the language and better minded.
Do Arabs were the people of eloquence or rhetoric speech, though they were literate?
The majority of Arabs were illiterate. They could not read or write. Yes. And the Prophet ﷺ was among them. Yes. There were only a handful of people who had the ability to read and write. They only spoke one language, which is Arabic, and the majority of the people were illiterate. Yet, this illiteracy added value to their clearance of mind, in the sense that they were the best poets. They were the best in the art of construction of words. They had this beautiful ability of saying nice things in very limited number of words. So Halima went back to her tribe, Bani Sa'd, and the Prophet ﷺ remained there for a few more years. Just when the Prophet ﷺ was about 5 years old, an incident took place. And we are told that as he was playing with the children, though he was not like any other child, he was quiet, he was deep in thought, he was not reckless, yet he was a child. So as he was playing with the child, Allah Azza wa Jal sent the archangel Gabriel to him, who took him and laid him on the floor, on the ground, while everybody was scared, and he opened his chest surgically. Of course, he was not a surgeon, but this is the power of Allah Azza wa Jal given to Gabriel. He made the first open heart surgery. We are told that he opened his chest, he took his heart, and from it took a black blood clot, and told the Prophet ﷺ, who was astonished of what's taking place. Imagine a 5-year-old child being operated on while he's still awake, no anesthesia, nothing. So he told him, this is the part of Satan in you. Now your heart is clear and clean. Your heart is pure. Satan has no way or will over you. And then he returned the heart back again and sew his chest back. Anas ibn Malik, one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, said and told us that he used to see the traces of this split in the Prophet ﷺ's chest in order to operate on him. And we realize that the Satan's part of the Prophet ﷺ was taken out when we read about his biography, ﷺ, about his seerah, and discover that he had never ever committed a major sin, and that he had never ever told a lie, and that he had never ever prostrated or bowed to any of the idols at that time. He never ate anything that was slaughtered to their idols. All of this, he did not know why. Simply because Allah Azza wa Jal has protected him from this by this operation. Now he was about 12 years old. Halima was scared because the children came to her and told her that your son has been killed. So she went and rushed with her husband to the location, and they found Muhammad ﷺ with a very pale face. And this is normal after undergoing an operation of such magnitude. And she embraced him and took him back to his mother, because she did not want to take any further responsibility that may affect her. The Prophet ﷺ stayed with his mother for a period of time. Some say he stayed there with her 6 months. Others say he stayed for a whole year. No matter how long he stayed there, a year or a little bit more or less, the Prophet stayed with his mother, and he again was an orphan for another time by his mother passing away. And this took place when the Prophet ﷺ and his mother went to Medina to visit the grave of his father, Abdullah. As some stories say, they stayed there for a month, and on their way back, she fell sick and she died. Again, this is an indication from Allah, the Almighty, that no one should have any influence over this messenger to be. No father and no mother. It is only Allah who will take care of His messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A 6-year-old child, no father and no mother. Immediately, it was his grandfather Abdul Muttalib who took care of his grandson. Abdul Muttalib, as we know, was not on his own. He had 9 other sons who had children of their own, who had children of their own. So his family was a very huge and big family. We did not mention, of course, the girls. He had only, we're talking about the male, the boys only. And beside, he was the leader of his tribe. He was one of the dignitaries of Mecca. So he was not like any other. He had so many things to do. Yet, once he heard about his grandson and the death of his mother, he felt so soft towards his grandson. He was touched by the death of his mother, that he took it as his own responsibility to look after his grandson. Though he could have given him to any one of his sons to take care of, yet he assumed the responsibility on his own, by himself. Abdul Muttalib treated his grandson Muhammad ﷺ in a very delicate and generous way. And Muhammad, as you remember, was 6 years old. He was a kid, he was a child. Abdul Muttalib was a fierce person. People used to fear him, respect him, and think twice before saying or doing anything in front of him. He was known to have a mat, a special mat, in the shade of the Kaaba, where only him sits on it. No one dares approach this mat to sit on it, except Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who used to come as a child, walking, until he comes to that mat and sits in the middle of it. His uncles, the great men of Quraysh, used to try to prevent him from doing that and try to take him away from it. Abdul Muttalib would say, "Leave my son. It's okay, leave my son." And they were astonished. "We are your sons and none of us dare to do this. And this grandson, you allow him to do this and he's a child?" And he used to sit beside him, put his hand on his back and embrace him to him and say, "This son of mine will have a great role in the future. He's not like any others." They can see, they know he's different, he's intelligent, he's honest. It's not something within him, but they can tell and they can sense that there is something very special about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.
But don't you think that there is a wisdom behind having Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being raised up as an orphan?
Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that Allah wants himself, the Almighty wants us to raise Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he had him. He had his father and his mother dead.
Yes, well, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, saying that Allah Azza wa Jal wanted to be responsible over Muhammad alayhi salam, not to be influenced by any of his parents, not his mother nor his father. And that is why he was raised as an orphan, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And even his great-grandfather, that is his grandfather Abdul Muttalib, who was great and honored by all the people of Mecca, even him, it was only a year or two before he died and passed away. So the grandfather that the Prophet ﷺ was standing tall next to, also it was only 2 years, and he passed away when the Prophet ﷺ was about 8 years old. But just before he died, he asked his son, Abdul Muttalib, asked his son Abu Talib to care for his grandson Muhammad. And this is inshallah what we will talk about just